Thank you for joining For Our Special Kids, where we openly and honestly discuss the magic and the mess of raising a child with special needs. We are thrilled to have you here and hope this time provides you with some wonder and wisdom. I'm your host, Jennifer Lansing. Let's get started. All right, I am on a United airplane on the way home, and I needed to get this introduction to my episode with Alex, Teal's daddy, recorded. So there's some background noise, definitely, in the intro, and my audio for the actual interview with Alex is crap, so I'm so sorry. But I am really excited to share this episode with you. He's amazing. He loves our daughter so much, and his experience from waiting in the long hallway before he joined me in the OR when Teal was born, all the way to after diagnosis. He's just really amazing, and I'm excited to share this with you. Please know how much I appreciate you. I appreciate you for listening, and I certainly appreciate you for liking us and sending us positive feedback and sharing us with other people. So thank you so much. As we head into this Thanksgiving holiday, just know how much gratitude I have for all of you. And as always, I hope you enjoy and let me know what you think.
It's Monday, but it's Thanksgiving week. Happy Thanksgiving almost. I am excited today because it was like pulling teeth to get our guest to join us. He actually recorded for about 3 seconds and said, "All right, I'm done. We're good." Let me introduce you to Teal's daddy. Alex has joined us today because I wanted to talk with him about, one, what's it like to be Teal's dad? And then because it's coming up on Thanksgiving, I think it's a perfect opportunity to talk about what we're thankful for in our life and how things have changed, and we have magic and mess with Teal, but I think it's important to give thanks. And so what a beautiful opportunity to talk to Teal's dad. Hi, honey. Hi, Alex.
Hello, my dear.
So what you guys don't know is Alex is not on social media. He doesn't like doing any of this stuff. So I really, really appreciate it. I'm going to take us back to that first moment when our doctor said, "Hey, you're having your baby today." Whoa, we got the news of you're going to be a dad today. What went through your head outside of holy shit?
I think the first thing was apprehension, because as I've heard from most people, there's always a plan around a birth, which never happens. I think there was an enormous amount of excitement and joy. Also, at the same moment, a level of concern for you, because I knew it hadn't been an easy pregnancy. And then there was the waiting.
Yeah. I just got emotional.
You asked me to do this.
I know.
You're in it now, lady.
Yeah. So you went and got my bags and got parked and all of that. And then we went, they took me into the operating room, and you waited, like you said, like they waited. But before all of that, they started prepping us. Do you remember they started prepping us that she was going to be really, really, really small? So I was 32 weeks and 2 or 3 days. So she was 8 weeks early. And they started prepping us. Oh my gosh, she's going to be so small. Remember that? I mean, they spent like quite a bit of time telling us how small she was going to be.
Yep. There was definitely a lot of setting of not so easy expectations.
Yeah, and the whole thing of we don't know what is going to come out. We don't know how this is going to be. We don't know anything. We will have this whole team of people there for you. Yeah, it was big. And I don't think either of us, looking back, I don't think either of us knew how serious it was. Like, I think I was so naive, it's our first baby.
Agreed.
So you're waiting, you're all dressed up and in your scrubs or in your hat and your astronaut suit. And I'm on the table and they are literally prepping me. Like, as in, I am the sheets up. I can't see anything. I feel everything going on in my belly. And I'm like, oh my God, hold on. This is happening. And where is my husband? What was going on for you?
It's going to sound dramatic, but they walked me into this empty hallway that was a ward that looked like they had used in the past, but obviously nobody was present. All the computers were gone. The desks were still there. Just a big empty corridor, and it was cold, and I sat there by myself. The nurse walked me in and just said, okay, wait, they're going to call you in any moment through those doors over there. And what felt like probably 5 hours later, and I think it was literally 45 minutes, finally someone came out and said, we're ready for you. And of course, my first question was, what's going on? Why is this? Why did they say they'd get me in 5 minutes and it's been forever? Because of course they prop you in front of a clock, so you get to stare at it, which is fantastic while you're waiting. That just gets your anxiety really down and makes you relax
calms
and
you.
become
Soothing.
full of joy and excitement as you watch the little second hand tick around again and again.
Oh my gosh. Well, I had some issues. I don't know if they told you that. Like, I almost passed out. It was not a good scene in there. So I think that's what was maybe happening, where they were trying to get me stable.
They had to stabilize you, is what they told me.
Yeah. And then they panicked because then they had to get her out. So literally, she was out, I think, 30 seconds after you walked into that room. I don't think it was much longer than that.
Yeah, it was fairly quick. I mean, I remember having enough time to hold your hand and look around and, process a little bit, because I don't feel like I went from the dark, empty hallway where nobody there with nobody to talk to a team of what seemed like 100 people in a big operating room with bright lights and my wife laying on the table.
Yeah. And I was crying because I remember saying, we can't do this unless he's here. So you took my hand, she came out, and I didn't get to see her. And you were the first one to see our daughter. And what did you say? You remember what she said?
Of course I do. Well, let me step back a little bit. So I was instructed to stay up near your head and hold your hand and just be there for support. And they said, everything's going to be fine. And of course they're reassuring and trying to walk me through whatever the reality of the situation was. And, it was reassuring to see you there and to hold your hand. And then all of a sudden, they pulled her out. And I believe the doctor said, go see your daughter. We didn't know if it was going to be a boy or girl. I was very conflicted, which is probably what most dads do. So I'm not unique in this situation, but I didn't want to leave you either. So I was kind of like, well, no, I'm good. And it was like, kind of thinking through the whole idea of like, wow, now I got to decide between two women in my life. This is going to be the rest of my entire, existence here. And so, of course, they kind of had to nudge me because I was holding your hand and I didn't want to let you go. I was obviously concerned. Teal bursted out a huge cry, which I think made us both very relieved.
I forgot about that. That was the best sound.
Yeah. Then I went over there and they were kind of cleaning her up in a little basin and had me cut the umbilical cord, which was pretty exciting. And then they put her in this like bag, which was weird, but I think it was for warmth and whatnot. But anyway, long story made short, I looked at the doctor, the delivering doctor, and I said, oh my God, she's huge. Which I think at the end of the day, aside from Jen not seeing her, 100% of the people in that room were like, I don't know if I would say huge. She's definitely a baby.
Well, no, she was also 2 pounds. I mean, She was so little, and yet they had prepped us for a baby birth. I mean, I literally was thinking she was going to be 3 inches long, and I know that's not what they said, but in my head, I was thinking I have an old man coming out that is 3 inches long. And we knew she was bigger than that, but I think that was so funny. She's huge. Yeah. And I just remember thinking, oh, great. And hearing the voice. I mean, I didn't get to see her for, 10 hours. So
I brought her over to you, but I think you were able to kind of reach back and that was about it. And at that point, I don't think at least in conversations, you don't remember that part of it, but we were behind the curtain and I think you kind of reached back and touched her hand and that was about it. So
yeah, I remember not seeing her though. I couldn't, because I didn't have
you definitely didn't see her, but I think you got to touch her.
Yeah. Well, and that was not okay either because man, touch was so limited, because she was so fragile. But anywho, so
luckily she had really big hands, so you could touch her hand like that.
yeah. We forgot to tell you what he was saying is those huge hands. She was 2 pounds with these like feet long hands. Okay, so we were in the NICU for 6 weeks. A lot of people don't know this. I've never really shared a lot of this. So we were in the NICU for 6 weeks, and it's funny because I look back on that time and I can still very viscerally remember never being really scared for her.
Yeah.
Remember that? Everyone?
We were very fortunate on that level. I think, funny enough, what Jen didn't say yet was I left the OR with Teal, and Jen had to stay, which was another hard, not decision. I didn't have a choice, but that was another hard one for me emotionally to be like, well, what, is she okay? Like, am I like, what's going on with my wife now? But I think the funny thing, and maybe not funny, it's not the right word, but the strange feeling was we didn't have a lot of concern for Teal's health at that point. We were just very, I would say, emotionally joyful, but conflicted in terms of, like I said, I was struggling to make sure you were okay. And I know that there were some complications prior to the birth. And so obviously that was probably my main concern. But even seeing her down there, I mean, like, it was pretty amazing to see the nurses kind of gather around and like, do you want to hold her? And, it just like, it didn't seem, it wasn't freaky. And there was a lot of beeping, and there was a lot of bright lights, and there was a lot of other parents that were freaked out and clearly going through emotional struggles and decisions that weren't ones that we had to do. And so to some extent, yeah, we were very fortunate. Or maybe we were just completely oblivious.
I think a lot of both. A lot of both. And it is a Thanksgiving episode. So I think that's probably my first huge, how lucky we were.
Yeah.
There's so many parents listening aren't that fortunate where, hearts aren't developed, or, I mean, she had complications. Obviously, she has special needs, and we didn't learn that for a long time, but she was perfect. And we didn't have, she was on oxygen for what?
2 hours.
Yeah. And so, gosh, I know it's emotional. Sorry, honey. But we were really, really blessed. And I'm just very thankful that you got to have that time with her. Because I was upstairs. Most people listening know that if you can't walk, or at least in our NICU, if you can't walk, you can't go see your kid, which is really weird. I'm sure if things were extreme, then that would change. But I couldn't get out of bed because I couldn't stand on my feet. Very, very sensitive to medication. And so that's why I had the issues going, before the surgery. And it's why I couldn't stand up, because I just was so sensitive. And so I was laying on that bed for quite some time, waiting and waiting and waiting. And I think I remember you popping in once, because I felt like, and no one was there with me. We didn't have friends. Nobody knew this was you're having your baby. And in an hour and a half later, we had a baby. So no one was there. I was sitting there alone in the room, just thinking, okay, I'm a mom. And yet I knew the baby was out of my tummy, but I had no concept of I'm a mom.
Yeah.
And I actually grieve that a lot.
Well, I can't imagine that feeling from the perspective of knowing the baby's not there anymore, but not being able to tangibly touch the baby or see the baby, especially as you're in recovery, which I know, happens to a lot of moms and dads and stuff like that. So the experience isn't necessarily super unique, but at the same point, it is definitely it's got to be a very odd feeling to have this thing growing inside of you for many, many months. And then all of a sudden you're like, it's gone, but it's not with me. And you can't even, see and touch that. It's, and of course, once again, that was where I had that conflict of wanting to be with her at every second and wanting to be with you at every second. And for the third time in my life, that wasn't possible.
Yeah. What a cool thing for you to talk about. I don't know if I've ever heard a dad say that, if I had to choose. And I remember looking at you and saying, you have to go be with her. I remember you came in and checked on me, and it was just this overwhelming realization that you have to go be with her now.
Yeah.
Like, no matter what, you have to be with her.
Yeah. And but I think at the same point, and maybe this is divulging too much, but we always talk about our marriage that, we were going to be first for each other, and that children would be at moments second fiddle, especially when it's important. And I think you recognize that you were fine, and that this was the time that you had to nudge me in that direction, because it wasn't easy to be in the same building, but not in the same room with two people that you all of a sudden were the most important people in your life.
Yeah. And how lucky we were that she wasn't whisked away to another hospital. We had a very good NICU in, thank goodness, because there are moms that are in one hospital and that child is transported in a helicopter to another hospital. So
yeah, and I also think, not to put it mildly, but you were very lucky. It definitely took you a little while to kind of get everything back together on your own health end, but as soon as you technically could go, you were able to go back down to the NICU and see her. And like you said, a lot of people aren't in that situation where they get to see their baby whatever within a few days or whatnot.
Yeah.
So even though it took you forever, and I know it was like a mental trauma on that end, the fact that you did get to see her later that night, or whatever you want to call it, was also a blessing.
Yeah. And that's when, so you got to hold her, right? They let you hold her. You were the first person to hold her.
I got to hold her before they put her in the bassinet. So I think that was one of the reasons that they made me go with her.
What's so important.
Yeah, but I mean, I basically walked with her from the OR all the way down with, I believe it seemed like there were 3 people there, but I don't remember. I mean, I don't think it was a delivering doctor, but I know that there was a doctor involved and 2 nurses, and they were doing all the prep and what they needed to do. And just to paint a real brief picture, there's kind of like in the NICU, for most of you that don't know, and I'm sure some of you unfortunately do know, there's kind of like this arrival area, which is probably the scariest area, because that's where every machine on earth is hooked up to your child, or the bassinet, or everything. And then there's kind of like another room, which is like a step towards stability, and then a third room, which is kind of, at least in our case, kind of like your transition out the door at some point, stable baby, just trying to get them to grow and go through whatever checks that they needed to do before they left. But in that first room, it's kind of scary. I mean, it's just a lot of eyes and a lot of hands and a lot of serious looking everything. And you kind of have this feeling of, like, back to what you said, which was like, I don't think we were worried, but then you walk into that room and you're like, oh my God, like, wow, there's a lot going on here. And unfortunately, you also know that there are people that are dealing with other things that are really, really close by that aren't easy to recover from.
Yeah. And Teal didn't stay in that room very long.
No, I mean, from what I can recall, I think it was 24 or 48 hours, but a lot of kids might have spent, a week in there. And obviously some kids bypass that room. So it's not that everybody has to go there, but obviously with her weight, it was a pretty major concern at 2 pounds and 1 ounce that they wanted to make sure everything was fine. And then I think once she started breathing on her own without oxygen, they were pretty shocked and pleased, and we were able to slowly move to room number 2.
Yeah, room number 2. We stayed there for a while.
We were there for a while.
So I talk about how, and we know this, like, Teal has affected people from the very beginning of her life. She has had this presence. And I remember nurses coming in to look at the isolette, and the isolette's covered with a blanket, right? And they would come in and just say, I've heard about your daughter. I've heard about Teal. Can I see her?
Yeah.
And I have no idea. Well, we definitely didn't know then how true that would be for the rest of her existence. I mean, she has positively touched people since the moment she came out.
Yeah.
And
that's been a unique experience, I think, that we're still trying to get used to.
Yeah. So let's talk now. She's 16 months. She's not meeting her milestones. I think all of us knew that she would be delayed. I mean, you pop out at 2 pounds, 1 ounce, thank you. And you're going to have developmental delays. And she was small. and truthfully, looking back, I had no idea what she should have been doing. Did you? I mean, I had some experience with
No, that
things,
was
but
the gift of oblivion.
yeah. And yet, looking back, maybe we could have done earlier interventions and different things that way, but can't hindsight, right? You can't change that. So we didn't know that she was behind. I think other people did. I think her therapist did. My mom definitely did know that she wasn't doing some of the things that she should have been doing. But we got a diagnosis. And as everybody knows, we don't really talk about the diagnosis. We got that diagnosis. And I think this is where it gets a little messy for me, because I had a lot of grief. And yet, I don't know if we really ever talked about it. It was more of, how is this going to affect our life? But I think we both kind of went into these research holes of what can I do? What can I do? And I went down more, and I talked about this on the website actually, about the story and how the podcast really was created, because I went down this road of intuitive spirituality, woo-woo, not drugs, essential oils, all of that stuff, trying to find answers for her, trying to find things that would support her.
Mm-hmm.
And then I found myself sometimes being caught in these horrible places where people were telling their horrible stories, and the research was horrid and the unknowns were horrid. And I stopped going. I stopped going into any of those places because I didn't want to know, but at the same time, I didn't want to believe that. I believe that I create what I think. And if I were to read those things and start thinking about those things, I didn't want to create them. So you had a different process. What happened for you after she was diagnosed?
I mean, in all honesty, I think there's a moment of maybe not necessarily denial, but misunderstanding, or, okay, well, this is a different course, but we're going to get back on that normal course pretty quickly. I never went into not the right way to say it, but the dark web. I kind of went into the more optimistic aspect, which I think can be a fault of mine at times, but I was trying to kind of read some success stories and try to get an understanding of maybe some methodology that, like I said, would get her back onto a course correct. But I don't know if in a real world scenario, you really know what you're dealing with in that moment anyway. And I think it is an evolution of understanding like what their capabilities are, what their abilities are, what they're bringing to the table, where you're trying to meet them. And frankly, just never putting them in a hole, or back to your point, talking about the diagnosis, because it does label something that doesn't have anything to do with what one's abilities are and somebody else's abilities aren't, or eventually what they're going to be over time. So I think to that extent, I probably was more positive. And then I definitely think that I just focused more on her and you, and trying to be supportive and, frankly, step away from it, not ignore it, but step away as and not focus on it as a negative, but just say, okay, what can we do here? And what are the best ways to support her? And obviously there's a lot of emotions around it. So supporting you and making sure that our family was dealing with it the best we could. And frankly, we also were, going back to the gratitude part of it, we were surrounded by some pretty amazing people. We had great support from all of our nurses. We had great support from our family. We had great support from, at that time when we got the diagnosis, a fantastic friend / nanny of Teal's, and a lot of just amazing people that were around. So I think that there was, in a strange sort of way, that was a massive fortunate aspect to even the people that were recognizing things weren't right, or they weren't easy, or they were going to be harder. It wasn't this like downtrodden mentality. It was like, all right, well, this is what it is, and kind of moving forward. And I think we were very lucky in the sense that she was just such a damn happy baby. So she didn't even care. She's like, I don't know what you guys are worried about. I'm good.
Yeah.
you guys are bringing this room down. I'm having a great time in life.
Yeah, she is. And she still is.
Yeah.
I mean, she still is. I think that's why maybe diagnoses are so hard, is because unless it is a rare disease where that the end of life is coming,
yeah,
life is, and we're very blessed that we don't have that with her.
The one thing I was going to add to, which I think was really important, is there was an important moment where we, one of my friends from college, I was able to talk to, who's a pediatrician. And even though it wasn't a long conversation, it was a moment where she said something to me that was like very striking. And she has 2 kids. And she said, hands down, she's like, Alex, every kid has issues. Like every single kid has issues. And you just have to kind of take it in perspective. That wasn't to say that her kids or any kids are, have it easier or harder, because obviously they do. But at the end of the day, I think it just was like a reality check to like, oh yeah, I mean, even looking back on everybody's life, I mean, you're going to have complications and issues over time. Luckily, some people have easier ones than other people. But ultimately, I think that was like a settling moment for me, if you will. I remember walking around on the cell phone talking to her about that.
Seeing that's so interesting because I hate that phrase. I was just talking to a mom yesterday who has a child in Tahoe here. And I said, that is my number one most negative thing. It gives me no solace. And I love it that it gives you solace. Like for me, or it gave you solace. For me, I want to be like, F you, because your freaking issues with like reading challenges, like, oh, you have to have a tutor to help someone read. Well, F you. You know what? How many hours do I spend every day trying to get her to eat?
Totally.
So can you hear me? Oh God, I got so like amped up right there emotionally.
That's why I interrupted you.
Because for me, that's just like no, you know what? No. Yes, every kid has issues, but no, you have no idea what you're freaking talking about.
I totally agree. But I think the flip side of that is, and this is where I look at it in the big picture, and, maybe this is where the thanks part of it comes back into it again. It's like, there are so many things out there in this world that are more challenging. And if you look around, there's always somebody that has it worse. There's always somebody that has it better. And you just have to keep some perspective. So, I mean, like you can sit there with the diagnosis, or you can sit there with the challenges, the extra time that we get to spend with her, trying to do simple tasks. And, I guess I'm not trying to say that it's not hard. You deal with a lot more of it than I do on a daily basis. But I also try to embrace those moments and be like, okay, well, it is what it is. And so, of course, we're going to try to be not only optimistic about it, but we're going to try to make it like a little bit more fun and a little bit more, little less than a task. And I think it's not any more than just maybe a coping mechanism for me, but at the same point, it's something where you get that response from Teal, especially, and it lights you up and you go, great, let's keep doing this, and I think that's maybe that reinforcement that she gives me. And I know she gives it to you, but also back to your point about her and being in the bassinet and the NICU, is like, she just draws people in magnetically and she makes people happier, whether you want to be happy or not. It's pretty hard to be upset around her. And, I guess maybe issue wasn't the right word, but I think ultimately it was a check in the sense that there are a lot of people out there, even adults, that have a lot bigger challenges than what we were going through in that moment. And there are a lot of people that have a lot easier. And ultimately it just gave me a little perspective to be like, okay, it's bad. It's something. We're going to have challenges, but ultimately we're going to deal with this. And I think I feel lucky that I have you. I feel lucky that I have Teal. And I think all the people that have been around us, friends and family and everything else, has just been set up for this moment.
That's a whole nother conversation of, we could talk about that. Like,
I'm not coming back on. This is your one shot, lady.
Yeah. Whatever. Okay.
My lawyer said one and done.
Oh my God. Okay. So, all right. So since it is a Thanksgiving episode, and I want to make sure that we end on us agreeing note, let's say that. And by the way, this is not all peaches and
I'm starting a podcast about marriage counseling. So if you guys want to tune in too.
So I think there's a huge key, right? Is we do try to keep laughter in our life. And I am not easy to be married to. Please do not say anything. I am a lot of energy. I'm a lot of hot and cold. I'm a lot of anger and a lot of happy and exuberance. I try to be more on the happy end, but I'm not an easy person to always be with. And yet I have found a partner who accepts me for who I am. I'll introduce you to him later. I adore that you bring that you bring that perspective to me, and you help me be the balance. And I think you really helped Teal be the balance as well. So I don't know if that makes any sense to anyone else, but you guys all are a really good barometer for me of helping me be the best mom. And I know that Teal has helped me to be the best mom. And I'd love to hear how you think Teal makes you a better person.
Well, there's a lot there. I think fate somehow created a situation where we have a pretty amazing relationship, and Teal was presented to us in a way that both was a challenge, but also a gift. She's strengthened us. She's brought us closer together. Definitely creates frustrations, but I think all parents go through frustrations. Yeah, it's very strange because I think in the big picture, and we talk about this a lot, Jen, but I don't think we'd change anything about Teal. And it's strange to say that and to think that, and most importantly, to believe that, because of all the things that we talk about that are challenges, she kind of supersedes all those with her happiness and her attitude, and the fact that literally she just brings joy to the world, but us, and it exudes out beyond us. I mean, I think your conversation about the NICU and like the fact that nurses would hear about her and come by. I mean, yeah, of course, on some level, just another kid. It's like, oh, cool. They want to see another cute kid, whatever. It's not that. There's something else. And it's a strange feeling when you're at a restaurant or when you're out traveling, you're on a plane, and people are just like, they just want to be next to her and don't want to leave her. And it's not because of care. They're just like, it's like pure like joy, and even like going back to our nanny. I mean, like we had a conversation briefly not that long ago. And I think I said something like, oh yeah, if you want to come over and, watch Teal, that'd be really helpful because I got to do blah, blah. And I mean, her attitude was just like, oh my God, like she's my best friend. And they're like 20 years difference. And she's like, I always want to hang out with Teal. It has nothing to do with that. And truthfully, genuinely, it's like, that matters a lot. So, I mean, like, I think to some extent, I guess I look at it and I go, no, it's not about wanting to change Teal, because I wouldn't, but it's also like, she creates a situation and like a globe around us and the world. And it just kind of like impacts everybody, whether it's, I mean, it's just, I don't know. It's a strange thing to say that like that moment where all of a sudden I don't have to choose between you and you and Teal, and I get to sit in the room with both of you. It's pretty amazing. And I'm thankful and grateful for that every day, but I also can't wait to see what the next chapters unfold. She's growing, she's getting stronger, she's getting smarter, she's getting more vocal, she's getting a little more pissy, and I see a lot of her in you. Vice versa.
Actually, that's a really good statement.
Not the smarter part. The smarter part's all me, but the pissy part. Okay. No, but I mean, and I think that's, I'm just excited to see the way that her life unfolds. And we know that there's going to be a challenging route at some points, but I also think there's going to be a lot of things that are a lot easier than we think. And maybe that's just my eternal optimism, but I love her for everything that she is. And I also want to be very, very frank and honest and say that she couldn't have been born to a better mother, because even though you can be difficult at times to be around, like she is just, God, Jen is just the best thing on earth for this little being. And I appreciate that so much. So
I think she chose.
I think it's a thankful package. It's not a thankful being.
Yeah, it's interesting when we think I was driving her home from school the other day, and I just started listing off all of the things that I loved about her. And I think it's a really good exercise for any parent to just, and it was just nonstop. And I just kept saying things like, I love the way your eyes twinkle. I love the way you touch my back in the mornings. I love it when you hook your little arm under my armpit to give me a hug. I love it when you, and I just kept saying things. I love it, Teal, that I love your humor. I love hearing your giggle. I love it when you make a joke without any words and you just start laughing.
That's a good point. Somehow she can lay out a joke and a punchline without any words. That's a gift. No, I'm not kidding. It's amazing. She can get you to interact and be like, okay, here's my joke. You're waiting, and then you get the punchline. You're like, you haven't said a word, and I totally know what you said, and that's freaking hilarious. Like, how did you do that? So crazy. It's funny. I know you're not asking anything right now, but just waking her up this morning before school. Jen's out of town right now, and I'm back at home, and so I got the privilege of taking Teal to school this morning. But it's like, even just like the fact that like you knock on her door in the morning to wake her up for school, and she's like sitting up with this huge smile, like, yes, let's do this day. And you're just like, oh my God, like, how do you have that bright, beautiful attitude, especially given that you went to bed so late last night after your concert? So yeah, it's a gift every day. And I don't know. I think listing that stuff off is always important, and maybe is a good exercise for us as well to each other. Yeah. So that'll be part of my podcast too.
Okay. Well, a lot of people have gratitude journals. I do. I mean, I have a place that I write my happy thoughts, and yet you don't read that. At least I don't think you read that.
I didn't even know you had them.
Yeah. Teal doesn't read that. And so putting it into an energetic form of voice, it's really powerful to say it, to get the energy out in the air, to have it surround her. And maybe that's my huge takeaway for today, is just saying more verbally what we love about one another and what we're grateful for. So at the Thanksgiving table on Thursday, maybe that's what everyone should do, is just say one thing that you're thankful for each person at the table.
That's a great suggestion. Yeah, it might be tricky for me to pick one for you, but we'll do our best. No, but I think the other thing to add to it, which is really important, is that I think Teal absorbs the world in a different way than we absorb the world. And seeing the world through her eyes is just so joyful. Like I said, waking her up in the morning, you see that where she's like, this place is awesome. Let's do this. A lot of people don't get that. And I think that's a very unique and amazing blessing we have in her and her attitude. So I hope we don't ruin that.
A good reminder for both of us too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I have a closing question for you, Alex Goot.
Oh boy. Do I have to say you're pretty?
Yes. How pretty am I on a scale of 9 to 10? How pretty am I? So what is one word that you would use to describe a child with special needs? Or perhaps what's one word you would use to describe our baby girl?
Over exceeding all expectations. That's not a word, but that definitely believe in that. I think people look at a child that has a challenge, and we see that a lot. We don't get it in a negative way, but we definitely get a different look. And I think there's so many times where I just want to say, like, oh, you have no idea how lucky we are. And you guys are thinking that it's just a challenge. No, I think she over exceeds expectations all the time. And I think she will, and I believe that she will continue to do that her whole entire life. So definitely not a word, but I truly believe that. And I think all kids do on that level. I don't think they're given credit for it because they look at something either physically different or hear something different or see something different, and their immediate reaction is to think about the negative and they don't look at the positive. So as a dad of somebody that brings joy to this world, and I know intimately, I will tell you she over exceeds every expectation every day.
I love you.
Oh, I love you too. You're still pretty.
Totally editing that out. All right, bye.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you found one or two meaningful nuggets of information to make your day better. If you think there's value in what we do, please take a moment to tell another friend, family member, or a caregiver. We'd love to hear from you at forourspecialkids@gmail.com. You can send in a question, a comment, a topic that you'd like to learn more about, or if you'd like us to highlight a certain person, please send that information to us. It makes our show so much better and so much more valuable for you. Our Facebook and Instagram handle is For Our Special Kids. And finally, remember to witness the wonder and the wisdom within yourself and others. Until next time.